Michael, how long have you been hiding this? Emily whispered as she stared into the basement room, her hand trembling against the door frame. What she saw inside made her take one step back. Then everything went black. 24 hours earlier, Emily Carter would have laughed if someone told her a locked basement door was about to turn her whole life upside down. From the outside, the Carter family looked like every other family in their quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of street where kids rode bikes until sunset, where neighbors waved while mowing their lawns, and where every mailbox had flowers planted around it in spring. Emily and Michael had been married for 15 years. They had a comfortable house, a routine life, and the kind of marriage people described as stable. Not perfect, just solid. Michael worked long hours as a project manager for a construction company. Emily handled freelance graphic design projects from home. Their days had rhythms that rarely changed. Morning coffee, work, dinner around 6:30, TV before bed. Weekends at grocery stores, youth soccer games for their son years ago before he left for college, and backyard cookouts with neighbors. Normal, predictable, safe. But every family has rules. And the Carter house had one strange rule that had existed for as long as Emily could remember. Never go into the basement storage room. Not the basement itself. The basement had a laundry area, shelves full of holiday decorations, and old moving boxes. But at the far end of the hallway downstairs sat a gray metal door. Locked. Always locked. Emily remembered asking about it years ago. Michael had smiled casually and said it was just storage. Old work files. Tools. Random junk. Then he added something odd. Seriously, Em? Just leave it alone. She laughed at the time. Thought nothing of it. Married people had quirks. Some people hated others touching their garage. Some protected their closets like national secrets. Michael had his room. End of story. Except over the years little things started adding up. Tiny details. Things too small to matter by themselves. Michael always carried the key with him. Not on the house key. Ring. Separate. He checked the basement door before vacations. Twice. Sometimes 3 times. If repair workers ever came over, he somehow always found a reason to stay nearby. Once, about 6 years ago, Emily had walked downstairs looking for batteries and found Michael standing outside the door. Just standing there. Not moving. Not doing anything. She remembered joking. Guarding treasure down here? Michael smiled. But his smile looked delayed somehow. Forced. Just organizing stuff. Then he changed the subject immediately. Emily forgot about it. Life got busy. Years passed. But lately something felt different. Over the last month Michael had started acting distracted. Not distant exactly. Just elsewhere. Some nights Emily woke up around 2 in the morning and noticed his side of the bed empty. 10 minutes later she'd hear footsteps upstairs. Slow footsteps. Then silence. One night she looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. 15 minutes later Michael climbed back into bed. Couldn't sleep? She asked quietly. Yeah, he said. Just checking on something downstairs. Something downstairs. Emily stared into the darkness beside him, because for the first time in 15 years that answer didn't feel normal anymore. And the next morning, she noticed something she had never seen before. Michael slipped his hand into his jacket pocket and checked if the basement key was still there. Emily almost said something right then. Almost. But after 15 years of marriage, you learn there are moments when asking a question feels bigger than the question itself. So instead, she poured herself coffee and watched Michael from across the kitchen island. It was Thursday morning. Outside, sunlight spilled across the backyard fence, and a lawn sprinkler clicked rhythmically somewhere down the street. Everything looked normal. Michael stood near the counter scrolling through emails on his phone while waiting for toast to pop up. Same blue button-down shirt. Same black travel mug. Same routine. Except now Emily noticed little things she had somehow ignored before. Michael touched his jacket pocket twice while standing there. Not casually. Not absent-mindedly. Almost like checking. For something important. Then the toaster clicked. He grabbed breakfast, kissed Emily on the forehead and smiled. Long day today, he said. Probably home around 7. Emily smiled back. Okay. The front door closed. She heard his SUV start in the driveway. Seconds later, silence returned. But instead of moving back toward her office upstairs, Emily stood completely still in the kitchen. Because suddenly she realized something uncomfortable. She could not remember the last time she had questioned anything Michael told her. Not because she trusted him completely. Trust was part of it. But routine was stronger. Routine turned strange things invisible. And for the first time in years, routine had cracked. Around noon, Emily tried distracting herself with client work. She opened design files, answered emails, made edits. But her focus kept drifting. At one point she stared at the same logo draft for nearly 10 minutes without changing a thing. Finally she pushed her chair back and walked downstairs carrying a basket of laundry. The basement felt cooler than upstairs, maybe 10 degrees lower. It always did. The unfinished concrete floor carried that familiar faint smell of detergent and storage boxes. Emily loaded clothes into the washing machine and reached for detergent. Then she froze. At the end of the basement hallway, the gray metal door sat exactly where it always had. Locked. Quiet. Ordinary. But suddenly it did not feel ordinary anymore. She stared at it. 15 years. 15 years of walking past that door. Thousands of times. Birthday decorations had gone into storage down here. Christmas lights. Old toys. College boxes after their son moved out. Thousands of trips downstairs. Thousands of chances to wonder. Yet somehow she never had. Emily laughed softly to herself. This is ridiculous. She turned back toward the washer. Then stopped again. Because now another memory surfaced. 3 weeks earlier she had come downstairs around 11 at night for ice cream from the basement freezer. Michael had been standing near the hallway. She remembered him looking startled. Not scared exactly. Just surprised. Then he stepped in front of the gray door before speaking. At the time she thought nothing about it. Now the memory felt different. Suddenly dozens of tiny moments started replaying in her head. Moments she never connected before. Michael volunteering to put decorations away himself. Michael asking repair workers not to touch basement storage. Michael disappearing downstairs late at night. Emily looked back at the door again. She walked halfway down the hallway before stopping herself. This was crazy. Completely crazy. She was creating stories from nothing. Michael was her husband. People acted weird sometimes. Everyone had habits. Everyone had private spaces. Right? Then she noticed something else. Tiny scratch marks near the lock. Not new scratches. Old ones. Like years of keys missing the slot slightly. Emily stared for several seconds. Because she suddenly realized something strange. If this room only held old tools and paperwork, why had Michael opened it enough times to leave years of marks around the lock? And before she could answer that question, her phone buzzed. A text message from Michael appeared on the screen. Hey. Random question. Did you go downstairs today? Emily felt her stomach tighten instantly. Emily stared at the message without moving. For a few seconds she simply looked at the screen while her mind raced through possibilities. Then she read it again. Hey. Random question. Did you go downstairs today? Random question. Nothing about that felt random. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She could say yes. She could say no. She could ask why. Instead, she typed the safest answer she could think of. Just laundry. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then disappeared. Then came back. Emily watched them blink for nearly 10 seconds. Finally, another message arrived. Oh, okay. That was it. No smiley face. No follow-up. No explanation. Emily stood in the basement staring at her phone. Because after 15 years together, she knew Michael's texting habits better than her own. He always explained things. Always. If he asked whether she went downstairs, he would usually add context. Looking for something. Checking on a package. Wondering if she saw something. Something. But not today. Just oh. Okay. Emily looked toward the gray door again. Suddenly the basement felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. She walked upstairs and tried convincing herself she was overreacting. By 2 o'clock she sat back at her desk pretending to work. By 3 she had reread the same client email 4 times. By 4 she gave up completely. Around 5:30 she heard Michael's SUV pull into the driveway. Earlier than expected. Emily looked through the front window and saw him step out carrying his laptop bag. But before he came inside, he stopped. Just stood there near the garage for a few seconds looking at the house. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. The same pocket. Emily felt a chill move through her chest. Seconds later he walked in smiling. "Hey, you are home early," Emily said. "Meeting got cancelled." Michael kissed her forehead and walked toward the kitchen. Normal. Completely normal. Except now Emily was paying attention. She watched him place his keys on the counter. Wallet beside them. Phone near the sink. Then almost immediately he touched his jacket pocket again. Quick. Automatic. Emily pretended not to notice. During dinner she kept waiting for him to mention the text. He never did. Instead they talked about ordinary things. A neighbor replacing their fence. Their son's upcoming visit from college. A movie trailer Michael saw online. Everything felt so normal that Emily almost started feeling ridiculous again. Maybe she had imagined all of it. Maybe she really had built an entire mystery from random details and a locked room. Then halfway through dinner Michael asked, "Did anyone come by today?" Emily looked up. "What?" "The house. Did anybody stop over?" Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "No," Michael nodded slowly. "Oh, there it was again. Oh, no explanation. No reason. Just questions. Small questions floating around bigger questions neither of them acknowledged." Later that night Michael sat in the living room watching television while Emily read beside him. At least pretended to read. Around 9:15 his phone buzzed. Michael looked down immediately. Too quickly. Emily noticed his expression change for half a second. Not panic. Not fear. Recognition. Then he stood up. "I forgot something downstairs." Emily looked over casually. "Now." Michael shrugged. "Just remembered." He disappeared toward the basement steps. Emily waited. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. She looked at the television but heard nothing from downstairs. No moving boxes. No tools. No footsteps. Nothing. 7 minutes. 8. 9. Finally she stood quietly and walked toward the basement door. She told herself she only wanted water from the kitchen. That was the story she repeated in her head. But somehow she kept walking. The basement stairs creaked softly beneath her feet. Halfway down she stopped. Voices. Emily froze instantly. Michael was talking. Quietly. Very quietly. She could not hear every word. Just pieces. "Not yet." Silence. "I know." More silence. Emily felt every muscle in her body tighten. Because Michael sounded like he was speaking to someone. Someone downstairs. And then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Another voice answered him. Emily stopped breathing. She stood frozen halfway down the stairs, one hand gripping the railing so tightly her fingers hurt. Another voice. She had heard another voice. Not loud, not clear, but enough to know it was there. For a second her mind moved through impossible explanations. Someone was downstairs. Someone had been downstairs. In that room. In their house. Emily felt her heart pounding against her ribs as she slowly lowered one foot to the next step. Then another. The basement looked exactly the same. The dim overhead light glowed near the laundry area. Storage shelves lined the walls. Holiday bins sat stacked in corners. Completely ordinary. But near the end of the hallway, light spilled from beneath the gray metal door. Emily stared at it. Then she heard Michael again. "No, that is not what I meant." Silence followed. Then the second voice answered. This time Emily caught more of it. "Please repeat your response." She blinked. "Repeat your response?" Suddenly Michael sighed heavily. "No. Stop." A few seconds later came a soft electronic sound. Then silence. Total silence. Emily stood there confused. Completely confused. Footsteps approached. Fast. She immediately turned and hurried back up the stairs, trying not to make noise. By the time she reached the kitchen she grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water. Seconds later Michael appeared in the doorway. He smiled. "Hey." Emily looked up casually. "Hey." For a moment neither said anything. Then Michael opened the refrigerator and grabbed a soda. "Everything okay?" Emily asked. Michael looked toward her. "Sure." Emily took a sip of water. "I thought I heard you talking downstairs." "There. She said it. Not directly. Just enough. Michael paused for barely half a second. Oh. Again with the O. Work thing. Emily waited. Work thing. I have been testing voice software. Michael opened the can and shrugged. Presentation stuff. Emily stared at him. Voice software. Presentation testing? Construction companies use presentation software now? Michael smiled lightly. Not very exciting. Then he walked back toward the living room. Conversation over. Just like that. Emily remained standing alone in the kitchen. Because technically his answer made sense. Sort of. Maybe. Voice software existed. Artificial voices existed. Phones did strange things all the time. But one question kept replaying in her head. Why downstairs? Why inside that room? The next morning Michael left early for work. Around 10 Emily found herself outside trimming flowers near the mailbox. Across the street, her neighbor Diane Harper waved while walking her golden retriever. Diane had lived there almost 20 years and knew everything about everyone. Not because she was nosy exactly. Information simply seemed to find her. Morning, Diane called. Emily smiled. Morning. Diane glanced toward the Carter house. Michael heading out early today? Emily nodded. Before 7. Diane laughed softly. Still hard-working after all these years. Emily smiled politely. Then Diane added something strange. You know, when you two first moved here, I never thought Michael would stay in one place this long. Emily looked up. What do you mean? Diane slowed her pace. Oh, years ago he always seemed restless. Emily frowned slightly. Restless. Diane nodded. Always changing. Projects. New hobbies. Different plans every month. Then suddenly after you two got settled here, he changed. Emily stared at her. Changed how? Diane shrugged. Calm down, I guess. Then she smiled. Not a bad thing. Emily forced a smile back. But inside something shifted. Because over 15 years Michael had always seemed steady. Predictable. Reliable. Not restless. Not constantly changing. Diane waved goodbye and continued down the sidewalk. Emily stood near the mailbox watching her disappear around the corner. Then another thought entered her mind. In 15 years together, Michael had told her endless stories about jobs, vacations, college memories, and old apartments. But suddenly Emily realized something unsettling. She had heard very little about the years right before they met. And somehow, she had never noticed that before. For the next 3 days Emily tried convincing herself to stop thinking about it. She really did. She focused on work. Ran errands. Called her son Ethan at school. Cleaned the kitchen cabinets that had not been organized in months. Anything to quiet the growing feeling in the back of her mind. But the problem with questions is that once they appear, they rarely leave quietly. Especially unanswered ones. Because now Emily was noticing things everywhere. Things that maybe had always existed. Or maybe had not. She could not tell anymore. Michael still disappeared downstairs some nights. Not every night. Just enough that she noticed. He still carried the basement key separately. He still checked his jacket pocket. And now every time he did it, Emily noticed. Friday evening Michael walked into the kitchen carrying his laptop bag and looked strangely energized. Good news, he said. I have to head to Indianapolis Monday morning. Emily looked up from the counter. For work. 3-day site meeting. He opened the refrigerator and grabbed water. Probably back Wednesday night. Emily nodded slowly. Indianapolis was about 3 hours away. Michael traveled sometimes. Not often, but enough that it never felt unusual. Until now. That came up suddenly, Emily said. Michael shrugged. New client issue. Then he smiled. Boring. Adult stuff. Emily smiled back. But inside something shifted immediately. Monday. 3 days away. For the first time in over a week, Michael would not be home. And Emily hated what her next thought was. By Saturday afternoon she felt guilty for even thinking it. By Sunday morning she felt worse. Because now she realized she was waiting. Waiting for him to leave. Waiting for the chance to stand in front of that door without him in the house. Waiting for an opportunity she had never wanted before. Sunday night Michael packed his suitcase in their bedroom. Emily sat reading beside him while secretly watching every movement. Shirts folded. Laptop charger packed. Toiletries. Nothing strange. Completely normal. Then Michael reached into his dresser drawer and paused. Just for a second, Emily pretended to keep reading. He glanced toward her, then quietly slipped something into his jacket pocket. The same pocket. Emily did not need to ask what it was. Monday arrived gray and rainy. Michael left before 7 in the morning. Emily stood near the front door holding coffee while he loaded his suitcase into the SUV. He kissed her cheek. See you Wednesday. Drive safe. Michael smiled and climbed inside. The garage door lifted slowly. Tires rolled across wet pavement. Then he was gone. Emily stood there longer than necessary. Listening. Waiting. Finally silence settled over the house. Complete silence. She looked at the clock. 7:12. Suddenly the entire house felt different. Empty houses always sounded strange. Refrigerators hummed louder. Floorboards creaked more. Air vents seemed to whisper. Emily walked into the kitchen and stared out the window. This is ridiculous, she told herself. Absolutely ridiculous. She was not some detective in a television drama. She was a 45-year-old woman standing in her kitchen about to invade her husband's privacy because of a locked room and strange behavior. That sounded insane. By 8:30 she started laundry. By 9 she cleaned the living room. By 10 she reorganized pantry shelves. At 10:38 she realized she had checked the basement clock twice without meaning to. By 11:15 she stood near the top of the basement stairs. Not moving. Just standing there. Her heart felt absurdly fast. She laughed quietly at herself. You are acting crazy. But she still walked downstairs. Step by step. Slowly. The basement looked exactly the same as always. Washer. Shelves. Storage bins. Concrete floor. Ordinary. Emily walked down the hallway toward the gray metal door. For years it had felt invisible. Background scenery. But now standing in front of it felt completely different. The scratches around the lock looked older somehow. More noticeable. She reached out slowly and touched the cold metal handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Emily let out a breath and almost laughed from relief. There. End of mystery. End of obsession. She started turning away. Then she noticed something on the small shelf beside the wall. A ceramic bowl she had seen hundreds of times before. Spare batteries. Flashlights. Random junk. Except today something silver caught her eye beneath an old receipt. Emily stared at it, then slowly reached forward. A key. Emily stared at the key resting in her palm. For a moment her brain refused to process what she was looking at. It was small. Silver. Worn around the edges. Ordinary. Completely ordinary. Yet somehow it felt heavier than it should have. Because there was only one question that mattered now. Was this the key? She looked back toward the gray metal door. Then back at the key. Suddenly her heart felt loud inside the quiet basement. This was the moment. The exact moment she had spent days thinking about without admitting it to herself. And now that it was here, she was not sure she wanted it anymore. Because questions were strange. Questions were safe. Questions still allowed hope. But answers changed things. Answers could not be put back. Emily stood perfectly still. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then she laughed nervously under her breath. You have lost your mind. But she did not put the key down. Instead she slowly walked toward the door. Each step felt strangely deliberate. The concrete floor beneath her feet suddenly sounded louder than normal. The hallway felt colder too. Or maybe that was just her imagination. Emily reached the door and stared at the lock. Up close she noticed more scratches around it. Years of tiny marks. Years of keys sliding in and missing slightly. Years of opening and closing. She looked down at the silver key one last time. Then slowly lifted her hand. The key slid into the lock instantly. No resistance. No hesitation. Emily froze. Her stomach dropped. Because deep down she had expected it not to fit. Expected this to end with relief and embarrassment. Wrong key. Wrong idea. Mystery over. But instead the key sat there perfectly. Like it belonged. Emily swallowed hard. Then wrapped her fingers around the handle. Do not do this, a voice inside her whispered. This is wrong. This is private. This is your husband. But another voice answered immediately. 15 years. 15 years and you still do not know what is behind this door. Slowly Emily turned the key. Click. The sound echoed far louder than it should have. For 1 second she just stood there staring at the handle. Waiting. Listening. Nothing. Absolute silence. Then she pushed gently. The door opened less than an inch. A cool draft moved through the crack immediately. Emily took a step back. Not because of the air. Because suddenly the room no longer felt like an idea. It was real now. Open. Accessible. Whatever had lived behind years of questions was sitting only inches away. She looked over her shoulder instinctively even though nobody was home. Empty basement. Empty house. Rain tapped softly against distant windows upstairs. Emily looked back at the narrow opening, then slowly pulled the door wider. The room beyond stayed dark at first. Completely dark. Emily reached along the wall beside the entrance searching for a switch. Her fingers touched smooth paint. Then plastic. Click. Light filled the room instantly. Emily blinked. Then stared. For several seconds she said nothing. Did nothing. Because nothing looked the way she expected. Not tools. Not storage. Not boxes filled with paperwork. Instead the room looked finished. Completely finished. Soft carpeting covered the floor. Framed pictures hung neatly on painted walls. Shelves lined one side of the room. Lamps sat beside furniture. Furniture. Emily stared. Harder. There was a couch. A desk. Bookshelves. Decorative items. Family photos. It looked less like storage and more like someone had built a private living room underground. No, not a living room. Something else. Something stranger. Emily stepped inside slowly. Her eyes moved across every corner. A recliner near the wall. A coffee table. Blankets folded neatly. Everything perfectly organized. Perfectly maintained. Like someone used this room regularly. Emily felt confusion replacing fear now. Because this made no sense. None of it. Then she saw the far wall. And immediately every thought in her head stopped. Because covering nearly the entire wall were photographs. Hundreds of them. And every single one was of her family. Emily stared at the wall in complete silence. Hundreds of photographs stretched from one side to the other. Different sizes. Different frames. Some old. Some recent. Family vacations in Florida. Ethan at age 8 holding a baseball trophy. Christmas mornings. Backyard cookouts. Birthday cakes. School graduations. Even random moments Emily barely remembered happening. Ethan asleep on the couch during a snowstorm. Emily planting flowers in the yard. Michael standing beside the grill one summer evening smiling toward the camera. Emily slowly walked closer. Her confusion deepened with every step. Because these were not hidden photographs. They were not secret pictures taken from shadows or strange angles. Most of them came from family albums she already knew existed. Some had probably been copied from digital files. Others looked like printed versions of pictures sitting upstairs in frames right now. But together, covering an entire wall underground, they felt different. Almost overwhelming. Emily looked around the room again. Her eyes moved across shelves filled with carefully organized boxes. Labels. Dates. Years. One shelf read family trips. Another said Ethan's school years. Another simply read memories. Memories. Emily felt a chill move through her arms. Slowly she walked toward a desk in the corner. On top sat several binders arranged neatly side by side. One binder had 2014 written on the spine. Another said 2018. Another 2021. Emily hesitated only briefly before opening the closest one. Inside were pages of notes. Typed pages. Printed photographs. Dates. Small descriptions. Emily stared. June 15th. Ethan won regional baseball game. Family celebrated with pizza downtown. Emily smiled the entire ride home. Another page. October 22nd. First snowfall this year. Emily wore blue sweater. Ethan complained about cold weather but played outside anyway. Another page. Christmas Eve. Family movie night. Everyone laughed during opening scene. Emily felt her chest tighten. Page after page after page. Years worth of moments. Tiny details. Birthdays. Vacations. Ordinary Tuesdays. Conversations. Favorite meals. Weather notes. Memories nobody should reasonably remember in this much detail. Emily turned pages faster now. Hundreds of entries. Thousands maybe. 15 years of family life documented piece by piece. Her mind immediately rushed toward one explanation. And suddenly she hated herself for thinking it. Obsession. Something unhealthy. Something hidden because it was strange. Her eyes moved around the room again. The photographs. The records. The organization. The secrecy. Emily suddenly felt uncomfortable standing there alone. Very uncomfortable. Because why hide this? Why create this room? Why keep all of it secret? Then something caught her eye near the desk. A small framed photo sitting face down beside a lamp. Emily picked it up carefully. It showed Michael and Ethan sitting together at a fishing dock years ago. Ethan looked maybe 10 years old. Both smiling. But Emily immediately noticed something odd. Written beneath the picture in small handwriting were the words, "In case I forget." Emily stared. Then looked again. "In case I forget." Not remember. Forget. Emily slowly lowered the frame. Suddenly every sound in the room seemed louder. Air moving through vents. Rain outside. Her own breathing. Then she noticed another object sitting near the lamp. A digital tablet plugged into a charger. The screen was dark at first. Emily touched it gently. The display lit instantly. A calendar filled the screen. Appointment reminders. Notes. Medication schedules. Daily prompts. Emily frowned. Medication. Her eyes moved downward. One notification sat highlighted near the top. Daily memory review session 8 p.m. Emily felt her stomach tighten. Below it sat another reminder. Family recognition exercises. She blinked. Then read it again. Family recognition exercises. Suddenly the room felt completely different. The binders. The photos. The notes. The labels. None of it looked obsessive anymore. None of it felt sinister. Emily looked around slowly as a horrible possibility began forming inside her mind. Then she saw a folder resting beside the tablet. White. Simple. Folded closed. Across the front in black printed letters was a name she recognized instantly. Dr. Alan Pierce, Neurology Department. And beneath it were 4 words that made Emily stop breathing. Patient Michael Carter. Emily stared at the folder without moving. For several seconds her mind rejected what she was seeing. Michael Carter. Neurology Department. Family recognition exercises. Medication reminders. None of it fit. None of it made sense. Slowly she reached forward and picked up the folder. Her hands felt unsteady now. Suddenly the room seemed smaller. Quieter. Colder. She sat down in the chair beside the desk and carefully opened it. The first page contained medical paperwork. Dates. Appointment summaries. Scan reports. Technical terms Emily barely understood. She turned pages quickly at first, searching for something that explained everything. Then she stopped. One line near the middle of a report caught her eye immediately. Preliminary diagnosis related to progressive memory impairment. Emily blinked. Then read it again. Progressive memory impairment. She kept reading. Observed episodes include difficulty recalling recent events, misplaced timeline associations, and memory gaps involving family details. Recommended ongoing observation and cognitive support planning. Emily felt her chest tighten. No, that did not make sense. Michael forgot things sometimes. Everyone forgot things. Birthdays. Grocery items. Names of movies. Normal things. Not this. Not hidden rooms and secret systems. She turned another page. Then another. Notes from appointments stretched back nearly 2 years. 2 years. Emily stared at the dates in disbelief. 2 years? Michael had been seeing doctors for 2 years? 2 years and he never said a word. Then she found handwritten notes. Michael's handwriting. She recognized it instantly. Large letters. Slightly slanted. Uneven in places. Emily looked down and began reading. Remember routines. Morning coffee with Emily. She likes 1 packet of sugar. Ethan calls Sundays if schedule allows. Front door sticks slightly during winter. Emily stared. Another page. Remember favorite details. Emily hates mustard. Ethan loves old baseball movies. Family beach trip in Florida happened in 2019. Another page. If confused, review photos before asking questions. Emily closed her eyes. Suddenly memories flooded back all at once. Small moments. Tiny strange moments she dismissed. Michael asking what restaurant they visited 6 months earlier. Michael repeating questions occasionally. Michael standing silently in rooms looking distracted. Once 3 months ago, Michael asked Ethan whether his college roommate still played soccer. Ethan laughed because his roommate never played soccer. Michael laughed too and blamed work stress. Emily remembered all of it now. Every moment. Every detail. But there was one memory that hit harder than all the others. 3 weeks earlier they had been sitting in the living room watching television when Michael suddenly looked at her and smiled. "Do you remember our first trip together?" Emily smiled immediately. "Chicago." Michael stared at her. Then after a few seconds he said quietly, "Right? Chicago." At the time Emily thought nothing about it. Couples forgot things sometimes. Now suddenly that memory felt completely different. Emily looked back at the folder and slowly turned another page. A letter sat tucked inside. Folded carefully. Not typed. Handwritten. Her name sat across the top. Emily. Just Emily. Her breathing slowed instantly. She unfolded the page carefully. "If you are reading this, then you open the room. First, I am sorry. I never wanted you to find out this way." Emily stared. Her eyes moved lower. "I kept telling myself I would explain everything when I understood more. Then I kept waiting for the right time. Then I started becoming afraid there would never be a right time." Emily felt tears filling her eyes now. She kept reading. "I built this room because I started forgetting things. Small things first. Then bigger things. I wanted a place where I could keep our life together in one room. Just in case. Just in case one day I walked downstairs and needed help remembering who I was." Emily covered her mouth. Because suddenly she understood the photos. The notes. The records. The labels. The hidden room was never built to hide secrets from his family. It was built because Michael was terrified of losing them. Then Emily looked toward the bottom of the page and saw one final line. And that was the moment her entire world shifted again. Because Michael had written, "I have not told Ethan either." Emily sat in that room for almost an hour after reading the letter. Maybe longer. Time no longer felt normal. She looked through more binders, more notes, more photographs. And with every page, the hidden story became clearer. Michael had not been living a double life. He had been trying desperately to hold on to the one he already had. Every reminder, every labeled box, every carefully documented memory had been built out of fear. Not fear of someone discovering a secret. Fear of forgetting the people he loved most. Eventually Emily walked upstairs carrying the letter and shaking hands. The house felt different now. Not because it changed. Because she had changed. Suddenly every room held memories she looked at differently. The kitchen where Michael checked his jacket pocket. The couch where he stared at old family movies longer than usual. The hallway where he sometimes stood quietly before continuing somewhere else. She had spent weeks searching for signs of betrayal, while missing signs of heartbreak standing directly in front of her. Tuesday passed in a blur. Then Wednesday arrived. Emily barely slept the night before. She kept reading the letter, kept replaying conversations in her mind, kept wondering one impossible question. How long had Michael been carrying all of this alone? Around 6:45 that evening she heard tires pull into the driveway. Emily stood in the kitchen staring out the window. Michael stepped out of the SUV carrying his suitcase. Same blue jacket. Same tired expression after work travel. Same man. Yet somehow everything felt different now. The front door opened. "I am home," Michael called. Emily turned slowly. Michael smiled when he saw her. "Hey." But his smile faded almost immediately. Because something in her face changed his expression. "Emily," he said quietly. She did not answer right away. Instead she walked toward him and held out the folded letter. Michael looked down. Then his face lost all color. Silence filled the room. Complete silence. For several seconds neither moved. Michael stared at the paper like he already knew exactly what it was. Then he looked up slowly. And for the first time in 15 years, Emily saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Not fear of anger. Not fear of arguments. Fear of being seen. Fear of a truth finally standing in front of him. Michael lowered his suitcase carefully onto the floor. "You went downstairs," he said softly. Emily nodded once. Michael looked away immediately. No excuses. No explanations. Just silence. Then he sat down slowly at the kitchen table. For several seconds he stared at nothing. Finally he spoke. "I was going to tell you." Emily felt tears rising instantly. "When?" His eyes closed. No answer came. Because they both knew there was no answer. No perfect moment. No perfect day. Michael looked toward her again. "At first I thought maybe the doctors were wrong." His voice sounded smaller somehow. "Then I thought maybe things would stop getting worse." Emily sat down across from him. Neither moved. Neither looked away. Michael swallowed hard. "Then every time I wanted to tell you, I saw your face." Silence. And Ethan's face. He looked down at his hands. "And I could not do it." Emily stared at him. The man she had spent weeks suspecting. Watching. Questioning. The man she thought might be hiding another life. But there was no other life. Only this one. The life he loved enough to build an entire room trying not to lose it. Finally Emily reached across the table and took his hand. Michael looked up slowly. Tears filled both their eyes now. Neither said anything. Because suddenly there was nothing left to uncover. No mystery. No hidden story. Only two people sitting in a quiet kitchen realizing that sometimes the things we fear most are not the secrets people keep from us. Sometimes the things we fear most are the reasons they keep them.